more than basic. It's a portion of its rap, but the core is ancient. It's imported like a pack of some more observations. They're important like the fact that we're bored of fake shit. More creative, have the floor, so take it. Travel to the core is a normal placement. Tattoos on my arm and
a lot of times I say stuff in life and on the mic that I'm not sure is true, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's true to me. It's like I experience truth only in things that I can't prove. So when I say things and then someone else says the same thing and says, hey, that's right, I get really excited. And that happened to me yesterday, where something that I say a lot was actually researched without my knowledge or input. I'll have to call them up about that. But they looked at it and said, hey, Ray, you're correct. And that makes me feel good. And I'm going to tell you people about things that make me feel good. Because this is my show, Tattoo with Children. It's worth listening to Tattoo with Children. I am the host, Flavor Ray, and across from me in seat B is the Dread Pirate Benjamin. And across from us both is my source of information, CIO No Pain.
What's up, guys?
What's up? Well, I say a lot about stories, correct?
Sure.
I've mentioned that once or twice.
Once or twice.
I believe that stories serve a higher purpose in society than opinions, for sure, and definitely a higher purpose than social media interactions. Like, I believe that we should just tell stories to one another to gain understanding. And recently, I discovered that some people over at UC Berkeley actually agree with me. There's an article that says, what happens when you tell your story and I tell mine? And it's underneath it says, sometimes empathy is enough. New research reveals how taking and giving perspectives can help us bridge our differences, which is what, in a sentence, what I've been trying to say for like 50 episodes.
All right.
So, like, this is me being inefficient, apparently, doing a podcast. But basically, what it comes down to is they looked at what happens when you engage with empathy emotionally. In other words, you try and feel another person's feelings. And what happens when, instead of trying to feel their feelings, you disregard that and just try to understand their perspective.
Okay.
What they discovered is that if you're different, if you're talking about the other, and you try and feel the feelings of the other, what more than likely is going to happen is that you're going to be more entrenched in your opposition to the other.
Okay.
However, if you hear a story from the other and engage the story from the perspective of the side you're not a part of, then you're much more likely then to open up a dialogue.
Okay.
So in an example that they give here, it's called perspective taking from perspective giving. So in an example that they gave here, in 2019,
Yeah.
they looked at Democrats and Republicans.
Okay.
And they first used survey data to see how individuals with greater empathetic concern would feel towards partisans on the other side. Is that if they experienced high levels of empathetic concern, emotions, then they also experienced a high desire to censor out the other side when the other side tried to speak. And whenever they felt that their side was injured by the speaker, they experienced a greater negative response when empathy was engaged. Basically, when you engage emotional empathy, you're more likely to engage greater with your side than the other side, which makes sense.
I guess.
Well, it's just because you're able to hit that emotion faster because it's something that you feel too.
Okay.
So you just hit it faster, you hit it deeper, and that entrenches you in your position.
Right.
If you feel attacked, then you hunker down.
Gotcha.
So, but if you engage with perspective taking, you hear a story and then they give you a perspective and then you take on that perspective, then with your emotions removed from it, you're more likely to be like, oh, you made a good point. And you actually do see this in your life if you think about it. I gave an example yesterday talking about this before I read this article about if somebody with me, if a cop attacks a black man and they video it,
Right.
I immediately get very angry at the police.
Right.
And then later on, you read the story and be like, well, the whole story is, this guy was doing X, Y, and Z. Maybe the cop wasn't completely out of line.
Right.
It's just a getting, they say getting all the facts, but it's really getting the full perspective. It's getting the 100 degree perspective.
Right. Well, and one of the things that we brought up, and we brought up a lot of different things yesterday, but one of the things we brought up is, so in the example, and I think it's important to mention this because it's part of the story, when you get, and we're, I am in no way absolving anyone of wrongdoing. But when you only have a tiny bit of the story, it's very, very difficult to make a correct judgment or to empathize with the right side or to see the whole thing. So you get the information that a law enforcement officer shot a man in the back. And it doesn't matter what color he is, that's wrong. We all know that.
Right.
Okay. Now, certainly race is very heightened right now, so it has been for a while. It's not new. But we all say that's wrong.
Right.
And then 6 months later, or sometimes 6 years later, the details of the case emerge, and we find that the law enforcement agencies had been looking for a serial killer for a while, and the law enforcement officer in question had to ask himself, okay, if I don't shoot this guy,
he's probably going to kill some more people.
he's going to get away. It's very likely this is the guy. And you say, well, you can't just shoot someone on likelihood. Well, how are you going to feel about that when 22 more people die?
Yeah, being alive isn't an easy set of choices,
Right.
And it's something that we know, but
Right.
we oftentimes do not give allowances for.
Right. And you say, well, I would like for that an officer to face off with the man and at
Right.
least give him the respect of shooting him in the front. Okay, I appreciate that romantic notion.
The wild, wild west notion of how the world works.
That we both look each other in the eyes and make a decision, you die or I die.
Right.
Okay, that's great. But that's just not how the world works. And sometimes, our Mike, his mother-in-law got bit by a dog the other day. Mm-hmm. We would all love to say, well, it's because the humans interacted inappropriately, or because she didn't give the dog enough warning, or because of this or that, the dogs hadn't been fed by their owners, or, sometimes life just happens.
Sometimes it's just, it's one of those things where the fact that his mother didn't end that dog
Right.
is a testament to her empathy,
Right.
emotional empathy.
And interestingly enough, I was on the scene fairly quickly, and I got to say, I was fairly impressed with the way law enforcement handled it. And that's pretty rare coming from me.
It is.
They were in. I feel personally that they treated everyone on scene with respect. Mm-hmm. I feel personally that they put a very dangerous scene and dissolved as much stress as they could.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
And that they handled the scene appropriately. Now, are there other situations where they don't do that? Of course there are.
Sure.
But that's not
And
what
those issues also get the most press. Like, that's the other thing about this.
Right, exactly.
A lot of the time we're engaging a story in a very lopsided manner. Like, you think you have all the information.
Right.
Because the media has given their story, but the media wasn't there when the thing went down.
Right.
Like if you're not there,
Right.
you don't really know what happened.
Right.
Even if you're there quickly and get the story from
Very close. Yeah.
very,
But that goes back to even human beings, because even if you're there, how difficult is it to report it back? Because you're one point of light. You're one perspective on the situation.
right.
And so the more you say it back, the more your brain is remembering it differently.
Like the way that you want it to go, rather than the way that it did go.
A prime example of this, and I'm curious if this is gonna turn the conversation or help. A prime example of this is Matthew Shepard. I don't know if you remember that incident. The media reported a little over a decade ago, I believe, that a gay man was killed by someone who hates gays.
Right.
And it was a what do they call
crime.
that? It was a hate crime.
Hate crime, yeah.
Okay. I got to be honest with you. I remember reading all the articles in the paper. I remember being offended.
Yeah.
I remember going, guys, we can't do this. This is unacceptable.
Yeah, we can't kill people for being different.
This is not. I don't agree with a lot of people, but I'm not going to kill them over it.
Right.
Like I don't live in the desert. I don't think anyone should live in the desert. I don't live in the path of a hurricane. Neither do I think anyone should do that. I don't wear sandals.
Right.
I think sandals are offensive.
I think sandals on men are offensive. Like I'll put that out there right now.
Yeah.
If you're a man, and by the way, if you are a human being,
Yeah.
and instead of wearing sandals, you wear thongs,
Right.
you can go fuck the right off.
Right.
Like
so
you can get hit by a car.
But you could, but neither you or I are going to do anything about it.
No. It's not that important.
Right. No, it's not. It is absolutely not that important. But the interesting thing about that is I was listening to Joe Rogan a couple of weeks back. Guys, I'm sorry for the dogs. Y'all are just going to have to deal with it for now. We have a lot of business at the tattoo shop
It's very
today.
interesting. This dog in particular, his name is Nipsey.
Right.
And he has perfected a high-pitched howl, like a little squeal or a whistle that is so good in the mic.
Yeah, well, and it's not just that. It's that it's so inflective.
Yeah, he really is. He sounds so put upon. Like, oh my God, guys, please.
Right, and he's literally laying like in the warmest place, completely fed. He's been out like 17 times today. I've played with him. Nipsey.
He is literally the most comfortable person in this room right now.
Right, yeah, and he's laying next to his buddy Hopper. So anyway, I was listening to Joe Rogan a couple of months ago, and Joe brought up the Matthew Shepard thing, and I was like, "Okay, this is weird. I thought we already did this.
Yeah, we already went through Matthew Shepard,
right?" And Joe said that they had found, and several books had been written, and that and by the way, the United States actually wrote a hate crime bill over this.
Yes, and
it passed.
The hate crime law that a lot of we keep seeing in the media about this is a hate crime. The Matthew Shepard case was the case that brought this about.
Okay. Then we find out after all the trials, after all the everything, after all the happenings, what do we find out? We found out that it actually was not a hate crime. When we had all the evidence and all sides of the story, Matthew Shepard was actually a drug addict.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, please don't hear this because it's not true. Gay people are not drug addicts.
No.
Drug addicts are drug addicts.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of people. They're all kind of colors. They're all kind of sexuals.
If you know any drug addicts, you know that they fuck everybody, look like everybody.
Yeah, they literally are black, white, green, red, brown. At some point dead.
Yeah.
But we found out 10 years after the fact that he was a drug addict that did not, in fact, pay his drug dealer.
And I don't know if you've met any drug dealers. I've known a lot of different drug dealers.
Yeah.
And the thing that pisses them off the most is not getting paid for drugs. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very strange. They get upset about
They
it.
get so mad about that
Yeah,
shit.
and they will, and I oftentimes like it's a funny misconception. You and I probably know more drug dealers than like most people.
Yes, I could say that for like.
Like,
Look,
and-
this is not saying that I do drugs or that Ben does drugs.
No,
we
not
don't.
at all. But we talk to everyone,
Yes.
and we like everyone. And so when people say like, "Well, I sell drugs for a living," it's like, "Cool, I don't."
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, "Well, do you need any?" It's like, "No, I don't."
I don't.
You know,
But you can
but you
sit
can
down
do,
here
yeah,
and-
you can be you. That
Yeah.
doesn't affect me at all, within reason.
Within reason.
So, no, you cannot sell drugs in or around any of my businesses. But
Yes.
generally, drug dealers already know that.
Yeah.
So I've only been approached in the last 10 years. I've only been approached by 2, and they were more like amateurs. They weren't like
Yeah.
fully in the game.
Yeah,
yet.
they had actually. I think one of them had been in the game fully and had gotten out of it,
Yeah, and
and was like thinking about going back to it.
yeah, exactly. And so what I'm getting at is drug dealers rarely use drugs.
No, they don't. Like people. Here's the thing about me that I figured out. I like drug dealers for neighbors. Like,
Absolutely.
people oftentimes be like, "Oh God, he sells drugs. He's bad for neighborhood." Drug dealers are great for your neighborhood
Yeah.
because they do not use their product.
Right.
They do not sell their product out of their house 90% of the time.
Right.
And they're going to keep all the other drug dealers, all the other thieves, all the other murders. Anybody that's a criminal is going to be out of their neighborhood. Why? Because they don't want the heat.
Right. And also they generally are more cognizant of, you know how some bartenders, there's some good bartenders out there, but a
Right.
lot of bartenders are like, "Man, I got a lot of money to make up this week. I got bills. So I'm going to sling like 78, shots of tequila tonight."
Right.
A drug dealer, on the other hand, will be like, "Bro, do you need to get therapy? Do you need to talk?
So
like,
you're-
do you need somebody to talk to?"
This is your third time today. I
Right.
think that you have a bigger problem
Yeah.
that I can provide for.
Yeah, and they will generally offer some level of counseling. I'm not saying they're empathetic human beings, but I'm
They're
saying
not.
like they want to keep they want to they're looking at their own market.
They can't sell drugs to a corpse, so they're not trying to kill you with this shit.
Right. Exactly.
They're-
So my point being is that they are generally just like people in other markets. They just a lot of times they hustle harder.
yeah. They tend to work longer hours.
Yeah.
And take greater risk, and so they're more careful about their shit.
Yeah, and they anyway. Well,
Yeah, that's-
we're getting off topic, but
Yeah,
but the point is that it is very unlikely from the evidence we have now that was actually a hate crime. Was it a crime?
It was
yes,
definitely
it was.
a crime.
It was a crime.
It was a straight up murder.
And did the person in question, the murderer, did he make some statements that could have been taken offensive about Matthew Shepard's sexuality? Yes, he did. Several of them, though, were up on not getting paid.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if anybody knows anything about me, but again, I've stated already, I love everybody. I have a hard time not loving everybody.
Yeah.
Like you've been around me long enough to know that I've got several people right now that I've banned from the tattoo shop.
Yes.
And when I say banned, I have told them the next time I see their face on my street, I call the cops, and I hope the cops get here fast enough that they're still living when they get
When
here.
the cops arrive, yeah.
Yeah, but they know already. This has been verbally communicated, eye to eye, that when I see you next, we're not talking. We're not dialoguing. This is not the place for an apology.
Right.
We're done.
Right.
We are done. I have had to draw a line, and I have no intention of going back on it now. You've put my people in danger, or you've made me think that you cannot make decisions as a rational person, even one who disagrees with me.
Right.
That said, you've hung out with me at 2 a.m, and I talk about those people, and it's not hatefully.
No.
I ask if I did the right thing. I ask if there's something else I could do for them. Is there a perspective that I'm not considering?
And see, this is the weird thing. Ben is naturally because of the way his story played out, the things that he's gone through, he already does perspective taking automatically. Like he knows how to take a person's even if the story isn't told completely, he will look at the situation from their perspective and gain an ability to consider their feelings objectively.
Yeah.
Like he has a very high cognitive empathy. I do not have a high cognitive empathy.
Yeah.
In order for me to engage with a person's perspective, I need to have a story. I need to have a plot.
Yeah.
Because I can dissect any character. I can dissect any plot, and I can then project myself into their story and figure out what's going on.
Sure.
So in the absence of a story, a person coming up to me with, all kinds of signs of whatever, all I can do is just take that person at their sign and not really engage in any understanding. And that's that's not a helpful mode if you're trying to open up space or make people feel safe or things like that, or even to sell them a product. It's not a good way to do it. Ben is much better at shit like that.
Well,
I watch him do it so many times.
I'm much different. I'm not. I agree with you that it might appear better, but it is different. And I think one of the reasons it's different is I don't know if it's better, but it's different is that there was so much religious upbringing. And when I say religious upbringing is all the people that were over for dinner were always pastors and their wives. They were always deacons and their families. They were always and generally deacons and pastors, and they tend to be both people of religion and also business people.
Yeah.
So you learn you heard, and also that they're people with a lot of drama. They they have a lot of fucking stories.
They got a lot of shit to say at any given time.
Right. And it's like, well, I had to stay up till 3 a.m. last night with Aunt Susie. No, she's not really my aunt, but her husband went in the hospital. And then I came outside and there was a drunk guy fighting a police officer and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And so you hear all these stories. So but then also because I knew their children, I grew up understanding the
effect of what they're doing,
the effect of what was happening, and I almost said loneliness, but I don't think loneliness is what I experienced. I think aloneness was what I observed. In other words, the children that I observed in these families were not lonely. They were alone.
Interesting.
And so that put me in the perspective of, as that matured, those experiences that I had from a very young person to an adolescent to an early adult, those experiences made me start from the perspective of any time I interact with someone, I assume that person is coming from a place of aloneness.
Okay.
And that puts so sometimes I tend to over-empathize.
Yeah, you do.
And you've seen this, and your wife has seen this, and my wife has seen this, and my family has seen this more so.
Oftentimes we have to work very, very hard to get Ben to see if you like. Some people are in this world are simply toxic.
Yeah.
Like whatever has gone on has taken them too far, and they're no longer worthy of being around us.
Yeah.
And by us, I mean all of us. Humans.
Yeah.
And Ben will stay with that person much longer than I would, or his wife would, or his brother would, or really much any of us. He'll just keep working with this person. We're like, Ben,
stop.
Absolutely fucking stop.
Yeah. This is not helpful.
Yeah.
and from my perspective, I think I am incorrect because I assume that their aloneness is known.
Right.
When that is not, in fact, the case. Some people may have made choices and bad choices and made them into habits, and those habits led to more bad behavior, more bad mental capacity, more bad mental acuity because they had so much negative in their life, but that was their choice. It wasn't like what I observed as a child.
Yes, it wasn't put upon them. They've actually worked their way into this position.
Right. Correct.
And at that point, there's not a whole lot anybody can do.
Yeah.
Now, but you still can empathize with them. You can understand them.
Yeah.
You can even take on their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But you just got to understand that at that point, like this isn't for Ben. This is for me and everyone else. At a certain point, you have to back your way out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because you don't care about them.
Mm-hmm.
It's because you care about yourself. Like I cannot say this enough times. Take care of yourself first.
Right.
You know, and but we all do this to a certain extent where we're sticking on with the person that we have to back out of. But that's kind of this beside the point that I was headed towards a little bit.
Yeah, go back
because we brought up the other. I really want to go back to the other because there's another part of this research that I found fascinating. I want to talk about that right after a break.
Doesn't matter if you're cooler. What is all president a loser box? Doesn't matter if you're cooler. What is all president a
You're back
loser
with
box?
Children. We're talking about the effects of empathy, or the lack of effective empathy, in particular emotional empathy, opposed to what's the research that I looked at is calling cognitive empathy.
Okay.
And what they're saying is that emotional empathy is very good when it's bonding people who are of the same tribe or of the same group. In other words, emotional empathy is what holds your family together.
Mm-hmm.
Is what holds your gang together, your company together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's emotional empathy doing its good work. Emotional empathy does its bad work when you're trying to engage with a group that is opposed to you,
Okay.
the other, or not even opposed, but just like the other.
Okay.
This another level occurs when you're talking about groups with disparate powers. In other words, if you have a group that's the majority against the minority, then there's another thing that happens here. So if the majority hears the story of the minority, they're able to gain perspective.
Okay.
They're able to perspective take and reach out from that perspective. If the minority engages with here's the story of the majority, they're not able to perspective take. And they do not gain any benefit because the minority already has that perspective. If that makes any sense? Race is the easiest place in my mind to look at it. Like we're talking about Mexicans in America, talking about immigration. They already know what everybody thinks of them. They already know how the law works. They already know how people think about how the law works and how people view them as the other.
Okay.
So telling them that story doesn't gain anything.
Okay.
But if the majority hears about how their stories, the immigrant story, is affecting their current lives and the trial, tribulation, all that, oftentimes you get a much better understanding from the majority to the minority. So perspective taking, telling these stories to each other, is not helpful to the minority, the group that has less power, than it is to help the group with power.
Yeah, which is, it's interesting that I wrote down on my sheet, my art sheet here, a Speaker for the Dead quote. because I think Ender from that story, Andrew from that story, was the first person I had ever heard say a group does not become, they don't grow with us because they say so. They grow with us because we say so.
Right.
So, in other words, he was the first person that the author of that story was the first person that I had ever heard say, the responsibility is not the masses. The responsibility lies in the smartest person in the room.
Right. Exactly.
Which is very counterintuitive.
Yeah, but it's very counterintuitive, but it's a lesson that we're continually having to learn over and over again. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Like back in what was the 50s? Yes, the 50s. There was a set of laws that were referred to as Jim Crow laws, which were designed to disenfranchise mostly, but in other sort of suppress black people in America.
Okay.
And a guy named John Howard Griffin, a Texan, saw this, and he was trying to figure out a way to understand how Jim Crow laws were actually affecting black people. Mm-hmm. Like, he knew in his mind that there was an effect, but he didn't really know what the effect was. Mm-hmm. So John Howard Griffin did possibly the most incredible thing a human being in America has ever done since its inception as a country. He colored his skin to appear as a black person, and then lived as a black person in America in order to experience Jim Crow laws.
For how long?
I'm not even sure how long it went.
Wow.
Long enough to write a book. The book is called Black Like Me. It's one of the most widely read books before, I would say, 1990. I didn't hear much about it after 1990. Mm-hmm. But people read that book, and immediately they were like, I can't believe that this is what's going on for black people in America. I mean, like, literally, it was just, and like, it was almost like Uncle Tom's Cabin. Mm-hmm. They're like, what's happening to Negroes now, you say?
Right.
You know? And it was very interesting because it caused a kind of a sea change in the thinking of white America at that time. Mm-hmm. Black America also read the book and went, yeah, and moved on. Mm-hmm. You know, Stokely Carmichael had a great book review on it. He said this is a great book for white people. You know,
yeah,
it doesn't do much for me at all.
Right.
But it was such an incredible experiment that he locked into in order not really to elevate black people, just to get a perspective going. Mm-hmm.
Which is, again, that ties my mind back to the difference between, we read that report years ago. I'm going to have to go find it. The difference between Eastern science and Western science. Uh-huh. Eastern science is experiential, meaning if you want to learn what a cat is, then you live in the room with the cat.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the end of the experience, you and the cat are both alive.
Right.
Because you've lived like a cat. So what he did there, in my estimation, was a very Eastern philosophy.
I would agree.
It was a very, now again, we can get into postmodernism and all that shit later, but that was a very experiential thing he did.
Yes.
Whereas a Western mind will take a cat, kill the cat, dissect the cat.
And look at all the parts of a cat and say, this is what a cat is.
Correct. And when I use East and West, I'm using it linearly, really on a timeline of the history of the world as we know it. Uh-huh. Meaning the East was Japan, China, Indochina. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that was the East. The East was what is now Iran, Iraq. You know, that was, and then as we moved west towards England as we moved west towards America. The science, and again, I'm not throwing out what some of these guys figured out, because a lot of this shit was only able to be figured out by, after someone's dead, taking them apart and figure out what the hell happened.
Right.
So there is a place for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there is no place, in my estimation, for killing a thing or a person to find out what's wrong with them. To find out
what's wrong with them. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Right. And so he did, the gentleman you're describing, he lived as a person of color in America. It's a pretty incredible story, quite frankly. I've never heard it.
Like I haven't read the book. Like, I went to a HBCU, and it's not one of the books that was in my African American studies. Mm-hmm. And I understand exactly why. Like, I wouldn't have gained much from it at that time trying to learn about African Americans.
But as an American, now you're able to look at it and go, okay, like, this is not more than.
Yes.
But it is an interesting addendum to what we're learning as a culture.
Yes, because what that guy did is what we're supposed to do. In other words, we are a fractured nation right now. And the reason why we're fractured is because we are so reliant on emotional empathy to try and get through life.
Yeah.
Like, people often say that Twitter is a collection of echo chambers. And emotional empathy is exactly why.
Mm-hmm.
You see a tweet, which is a very short series of characters, mm-hmm. and it elicits an emotional response. And in that response to you then put out another tweet, mm-hmm. which elicits another emotional response. And then we get this going on thousands of people, mm-hmm. millions of tweets. Mm-hmm. You develop an actual bubble mm-hmm. that is almost impenetrable.
Correct.
If you read a book, mm-hmm. that doesn't happen.
Correct.
If you engage in a town hall discussion, mm-hmm. that doesn't happen. You're actually able to get a better handle on the situation itself because you're perspective giving mm-hmm. and perspective taking.
Correct.
And that is the exact essence of why I believe in stories and why I believe in conversations.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm trying to get to, because I really don't think there is a way out of this without doing that.
Well, and I think one of the things reading does also, and, it's difficult in a modern age to find time for it, but one of the reasons reading is so important is because the first conversation you're having is with yourself.
Yes.
That's what a lot of people don't understand about reading, and it's why specifically you and I like to read so much, is because we first want to dialogue with ourselves. Now, this gets into psychology really quickly because people say, well, when Ben is talking to Ray, he's having a conversation. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
But if Ben hasn't had a conversation with himself first, and then you get the people who have different experiences who go, what the fuck has Ben talking about? Who is this self with which he is dialoguing?
With which he's talking to.
Before he dialogues with Ray. Because, see, that conversation with myself informs the conversation I will have with you.
Exactly.
Which is it's a very Star Wars statement to make, because it then sounds as if there are two of me in here.
Which, to a certain extent, there is.
Correct.
And you've heard me say this over and over again, is like, hey, guys, you have to sort of tangle with your ego. Said, well, what is the ego? Well, it is the I. Well, how can I engage with my own consciousness?
Which I think is why self-care is so hard. Because you're asking people to love themselves, and they are saying in their silence, who is this self that I am loving?
Yeah.
So then they get twisted, right?
Right.
Easily so. They get twisted in, what is myself? Who am I?
Yeah, which is an important question to ask, though. Like, it's something that we have to grapple with, because otherwise you can't tell your story. If you can't engage with yourself, you cannot then engage with me. All you can do is emotionally empathize. You can only hear my anguish and attempt to feel my anguish. That is very egoic.
Yeah.
That's how we get that whole collective trauma thing, where something would happen to someone literally, 10,000 miles away, and it's like it's happening to us. Or we get so locked into our sports teams, that we're willing to live and die for them.
Right.
That's all egoic nonsense.
Well, let me ask you this, and I realize I'm turning the ship a little, but how do you identify that self?
I identify that self by not. What happens with me is I'll have a thing that pops up that is a conflict.
Okay.
Like I can only identify the ego in conflict.
Okay.
So like I'll have I'll feel one way about something and I'll think in my head this feels like my ego trying to pick a fight.
Okay.
And so I will then disengage myself from the fight and watch what happens.
Okay.
So I'm trying to give a solid example. So let's say let's say a person is assaulted. Okay, a child is assaulted.
Okay. So a child is in Walmart. A guy walks up, punches the child in the face.
Yeah.
Okay.
And immediately I will. The way I will engage in that situation before being startled and appalled is, well, it's up to me to punish this guy.
Okay.
That is my ego making itself bigger than necessary.
Okay.
It's actually not my business to punish that fellow. Mm-hmm. Protect the child, yes.
Okay.
So I'll like, hey, you're an adult. This is a child. I'm moving the child away.
Mm-hmm. Until you know more information.
Until I know more information, exactly. And it's not my job to gather more information.
Right. The authorities or the owners of the store or the parents or
whoever is it like I'm just a guy like everybody else.
Okay.
But my ego will be like, no. We have a responsibility to teach this guy a lesson.
Okay.
And so what I'll do is, all right, that's how you feel. That's fine. I'm just going to let these thoughts fly through while I sit here and have ice cream with the kid and not engage with the kid either.
Okay.
And just because basically it's me not wanting to make a situation worse. Now, if the situation, as the situation develops, I react developmentally.
How do you? I think I'm going in a little different vein. Do you? And I'm going to keep trying to push this point for just a second, and we'll get back to your thesis. How do you? Do you talk to yourself? Constantly. And is it one talking to one, or is it one talking to two? How does it feel, I guess?
It feels sort of like meditation.
Okay, so it's they're both you.
Yeah, they're both me.
Okay.
Like it's not as if, I don't have an other inside of me. Like the way I always describe it is to be a human is you have a very good portion of yourself that does things specifically to create and cultivate.
Okay.
And you have a other side of yourself that does things specifically to destroy and denigrate.
Okay.
So we have the cultivation and the destruction. Mm-hmm. And in the middle is me. Okay. In the middle is me watching these two sides of myself.
Okay.
And across from me is my ego leaning to one side or the other side, whichever side is providing more conflict to verify its existence.
Okay. So, you guys, Mike, are you ready for the sound clip of the week?
Sure.
Okay. So one of the ways, and I don't know where I started this. This is going to be good. You guys are going to appreciate this. I'm glad no one's drinking anything. One of the ways I know that I'm me or that I have a self is that I touch myself.
I mean, he could have just gone with Degas. I mean, I think therefore I am.
I don't want anybody else.
But he had to go with the touch
Think
myself.
about me.
Okay. Okay,
that was definitely the sound clip
If it
we're
wasn't,
going to go with.
If it wasn't clear prior to, episode 58, you all should not be listening to this podcast. Just, you should not be doing it.
Yo, no, this is good. Like,
Okay, but it's
Self-love
not. It's not.
to the person's thing.
It's not how you think.
I know. This is fun.
So one of the things that will happen is that I'm very. I'll be very outside myself. Okay, I don't feel connected.
Right.
I'll be experiencing a lot of emotion.
Right.
Or I'll be experiencing a lot of disconnect.
Yes.
Or I'll be experiencing something that is very difficult for my rational mind. Okay. And it'll be later at night, right? So
In general, I touch myself late at night too, just in case somebody was wondering.
And so I'm there, and what'll happen is, however the way I'm laying or the way I'm turning,
Yeah.
right, is one hand will fall across my body, like my chest, to the other side. Okay, so now my right hand is on my left shoulder.
Right.
Right. It's just kind of it's comfortable. I've turned to my left.
Yeah.
And my right hand is falling to my left side, and I'll think to myself, and so I kind of like. Yeah, that's a shoulder. And I'm like, I'm running my left hand, and I'm like, this is so fascinating. Like, sometimes I feel very connected to myself, but other times this feels like a physical form that I'm inhabiting.
Yeah, okay.
And so now I'm back. I'm home. I'm in myself again.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I get that.
So it's almost as if I was not here for a moment.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was. I wasn't anywhere else. I wasn't floating away. But now I'm like, okay, that's a shoulder, that's a bicep, that's an elbow. Wow, that elbow hurts more than it did when I was younger.
Yeah. That's describing a whole concept involved with this in presence.
Yes,
right?
yes. But that's one of my ways to get back to me. Is that touch, that tactile sensation of, like I'm patting my jacket right now. Like, okay, this is because I'm cold. Because it's 70 degrees outside.
Dude, like, what the fuck is going on with it? It's okay, like, it's like 65 degrees or whatever. The fucking wind blows and my hands start shaking. Like, I'm so fucking sick of this nonsense weather.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't need it.
It's a little much sometimes.
I mean, like, I know the universe isn't here to give me what I want and shit, blah, blah, but you have to make some sense at some point of this nonsense. Like, this is the reason why I fucking hate scientists. Because they cannot tell me. So, it's climate change. That is bullshit. Not climate change is bullshit, but the idea that the reason why my hands are cold right now is because of climate change that you can't identify. Otherwise, you would have told me that this is going to happen, and you didn't.
Right.
You don't really know what's going on. You just think that you know. You have a trend line. Okay, fine. I just want to know when the fuck my weather gets normal.
Right.
And by normal, I mean consistent. It can be consistently bad. I don't give a fuck.
Right. No, it could snow for the next 100 years, like winter came all over us.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
But like this idea that I could have dressed appropriately, or I should have brought a suitcase with me to work.
Right.
Because I have no fucking clue. Like,
dude,
is
we're
it good,
literally
bad,
building
ugly?
a shower in this facility because we don't know how to fucking dress.
Right.
It's like, guys, if we're getting any work done, we're gonna be able to change clothes 6 times a day.
Right.
Because this is stupid.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. So that was the sound clip of the week, but I think it's interesting to note that, like, every person has a different way of dealing with themselves, and we all have a different headspace about it.
Yeah,
think about it. That we think about the self differently. So when you say love yourself, you think you're saying something positive, but to a person who might not have your way or my way,
Yeah.
they might not have ever dealt with the self. They're going,
It's just anxiety.
Yeah.
It's just anxiety that I'm heaping on the one I say. And by the way, I said that knowing that was the case. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't confused about that part of it.
Right.
But it's work to be done. Like it's not as if I'm saying like, okay, take off of work and go to the spa and you've done your you're doing the thing that I said to do. I'm putting more work on you. Mm-hmm. The work of learning who it is that you are, what it is that you are, what it is that you want, and taking care of that. Like that is
It's a very difficult thing because when you talk about knowing yourself, and I run into this a lot with people that are, say, 35 to 55, where they say, well, I'm just now learning about the self, so I'm late.
yeah.
No
one's ever late.
There is no such thing as late.
Yeah.
You're a human being.
Yeah.
You're allowed.
Yeah.
It's for all the flaws and problems that we have in our society, you've made it this far somewhat safely. Is there still work to be done? Of course.
Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's just more work. Like the work I think that is more important than the work that you do is the work that you haven't done. It's like whatever that thing is you haven't been doing, do that thing. And then get back to what you do all the time. Because what you do all the time, you're always going to do.
Yeah, and your kids and your parents and your friends and your significant other, it is not their job to learn about yourself.
It's not.
It's your job. It's yourself. And I'm not trying to be like, fucking high as shit. I'm not.
Right? No, we're not high.
I'm just being a normal person saying, I get it. I get where you're coming from, but I have bad and good news for you. No one's coming. It's yourself.
Yeah.
No mother figure, no father figure, no daughter figure, no son figure, no friend figure is going to approach. And by the way, if they do, you're going to then associate your feelings with them. So if they go away, you're going to feel bad. Those feelings were always yours.
Right.
They didn't have anything to do with. That person might have unlocked it. Actually, I don't think that person unlocked it.
Yeah.
I think that person shined a light on the lock so you could unlock it.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to get back to what you were talking about. I didn't mean to move it away, but I think it's in where you and I are at specifically this week. It's a very important concept that A, you're loved and accepted the way you are. B, no one's coming to help you, and if they do, they're only shining a light on it. They're not doing it.
Yes.
They can't know you.
They can't actually do that work.
No.
Like that's a work that's impossible for them.
That's your work.
That specifically because it's something that they can't even engage in. Like that's my entire point.
Yes.
Like no one is going to engage with your story until you tell it. And you won't tell it until you figure out certain things about yourself.
Yeah.
And the reason why this is important is because of that research.
Yeah.
Because the thing that we have the most trouble with is the other.
Yeah.
We have trouble with it in religion. We have trouble with it in race. We have trouble with it in politics.
Yeah.
Like we're not hearing one another because we're not speaking to one another. We're not telling those stories. We're not giving that perspective, and so we can't perspective take.
Yeah.
In religion, it is becoming very, very, very annoying.
But
it's something that we all expected if we were paying attention. We knew that this was coming. Me and Ben have been talking about it for a very long time.
Yeah, we've been concerned for a very long time. But the point I want to go back to is your commentary on the other. I think the first other that you have to address is you.
Yeah.
You are.
You have to accept that.
You know how when they you know how when you watch those movies. Remember there was a movie Dante's Peak.
Great movie.
Or one of those end of the world shows.
Yeah.
They talk about the epicenter. They talk about where is the origin, outbreak.
Outbreak.
Where's the source?
Yeah.
They have different terms for it in different scientific communities.
Patient zero.
Yeah, exactly.
V Wars. By the way, if you're not watching V Wars, watch V Wars. That shit's great.
Is it?
Oh God. Yeah.
I really liked. I still haven't watched a whole lot of. Like I watched The Walking Dead, but before that, 28 Days Later.
It's a good movie.
That was a good film.
That's probably the best zombie movie ever made.
Yeah,
People will disagree with me on that, but
they'll disagree with you.
28 Days Later.
But they'll be wrong.
Yeah.
That movie both fascinates me and terrifies me.
It's absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, and
because like in that situation, I know like the countdown aspect of it would be the worst for me.
Yeah,
like that's like the worst situation I can be in.
Yeah. Well,
Like
it's like the opening to a poker tournament for me.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know. Like they're like, we got 1 minute left to start, and I'm like, I don't even know if I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
Like I may be in an ambulance on the way to the hospital by then.
Yeah.
Now once the clock starts, I'm fine.
Right.
It's that build up to
that anticipation.
Shuffle up and deal. Yeah, it's terrible.
10, 9,
right.
oh fuck.
I'm the guy that's like when you watch the spaceships take off.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that's like in the kitchen fixing food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're like, hey, this is
the
Ben. You don't want to miss this, do you? And I'm like, I absolutely do want to miss it.
Yeah. I'm not great with countdowns.
So, but I think that again goes back to Ender's Game, Speaker for the Dead, Xenocide. The idea that the first other you have to look at is you.
Because the thing about it is, we often I don't think we're born knowing ourselves.
No, not at all.
I think that when we come out, the first question we're really asking is, you look at your mother with your baby eyes, and you're like, is that me?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not me.
Right.
Is that guy over there me?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's a slowly building of figuring out what it is and we never really stop doing it.
Yeah.
You know? And I think I think it's important that we recognize, in a real sense that work is still going on.
Gary Vee said something last night that kind of fucked me up. I was listening to his 5 hours in Dubai, and I don't listen to it all at once. I like driving home, driving back. So it'll take me a couple weeks to finish. But he's got a 5 hour vlog of him in Dubai. And he was really hard on the people in Dubai because he was like, you motherfuckers are all taking pictures of Bugattis and Lamborghinis. And like, this is a desert, man. Like, what the hell?
Right. Take that doom buggy out there?
Yeah.
No.
He's like, and none of you look happy. You're like, I got my Learjet and I'm in Dubai, but you're all miserable.
You're driving a Bugatti on like 18 miles of road.
Yeah, right. And then the road just ends in sand.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've never been there. I don't know if I will go there. It's the desert. It doesn't seem like it would have a lot to offer me, but maybe one day. But he said something really fascinating. He said, I know this is going to be hard for you, but go home and tell your mom, your dad, your spouse, or your kid, or your brother, or your sister that I'm not going to live for you anymore. I'm going to live for me.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like...
That's an interesting concept.
I was like, dude, I don't know if I can do that. I'm 40 years old, and I'm like, dude, I've started 3 successful businesses, 6 unsuccessful business. Like I'm in the game.
I would have to, it would be really hard. I'd have to burn that for quite some time. They would get close to that.
And I think this is the first. I think quite frankly, me and you, this is how we wanted to start 2020 right here.
Yeah,
we're saying some shit that we don't know if we can live down.
Yeah,
I am fascinated.
This is a consequence.
I am fascinated by what he said. I did not imply that it was right, by the way.
No, it could be completely wrong. He's just a dude.
But it made me think in a different line. And like you, I went, this one's going to take me a minute.
Yeah.
Because so from 0 to 18, I would say I lived for my parents.
I would say that's exact. I would say specifically I lived for my mother until I was 16.
Okay.
And then for about 2 years, I was living for the booty.
Okay.
And then and then after that, I was looking for the next person to live for.
Okay. And so then for me, I went from my parents' house to my significant other. Mm-hmm. I like that better than, my wife. I was looking for a significant partner.
Right.
And then I began living for her.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, that is not her fault. It was not my parents' fault that I was living for them.
Yeah. It's
but
not my wife's fault that I live for
right.
her.
But I was doing my desperate best to do that. So when Gary said that, I was like, hold up. What? I didn't think that was right.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was exactly wrong. Like I can't live for me.
That sounds selfish.
That sounds wrong.
It sounds incorrect.
Like it sounds like something that if I said out loud, not only would my parents or my spouse or my brother or my friend,
I think my daughter would slap my face if I told her that.
Yeah, it sounds like Jesus would that's one of those moments where like Jesus apparates out of thin air like a Harry Potter thing, and he's like, "You son are wrong."
Yeah, and then vanishes,
and you're just like left there with yourself, like in the hallway, like, fuck, did I just do?
I love that picture. Like I'm gonna say, hey guys, I'm gonna live for me now, not for you. And literally, Jesus taps me on the shoulder and just shakes his head. And just vanishes. So that's a very interesting concept. I'm really now I want to go a few hours in Dubai with Gary Vee just to figure out what the fuck he's talking about.
And it's again that I'm only able to work with this concept because I have done some self work and I have and it started years ago and it has evolved. Many things I would describe that I did in my late 20s, early 30s, I did as I did like the first grade of self-work. I did the second grade of self-work. I did the third grade of self-work. Some of the things that I use, some of the things that I did there I continue to use, but most of them were building blocks. They were the foundation of the self-work that I do now.
Right.
But it has evolved. I haven't, just like working out, I haven't done it as well as I could have.
Uh-huh.
I've let the focus come and go.
Right.
But to involve myself in the research that you're talking about empathy, the ideas that you're talking about, I do have to recognize that's like you saying, "Hey Ben, I want to see how much you can lift."
Yeah.
Well, I haven't been doing the work, so I can't lift much.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like this was like that was the reason why I was very interested in the article. I was like, this is hitting me in my weak point.
Yeah.
That like I've tried to engage in, but I couldn't solidify it. Mm-hmm. I couldn't solidify it in my mind what I was engaging with, and this sort of solidified in my mind what I was engaging with.
Okay.
And now I feel like I can make a workout regime.
Okay. Right.
Like, and I immediately started trying it, where I was like, instead of asking questions, mm-hmm. Instead of trying to start a conversation by asking an interesting question, mm-hmm. I want to try and tell an interesting story. Mm-hmm. And see if me giving my perspective starts a conversation.
Okay.
Because if it's something that's going to be helpful, I think perspective giving and perspective taking should be the primary goal. So why not start with that?
Right.
And it's just an idea. It's like it may not work at all. I don't really know.
Yeah, but but we both are insistent that we have to try.
Yeah.
That it is self-work is necessary to be human. And
yes.
and we consider ourselves currently, because we have no other evidence, that we are human.
Yeah. It's my hope that I am a human.
Yeah, and so to continue to be human, we know we have to do this work, just like eating healthy or taking a smoke break because you enjoy it, or drinking more water, or working out,
every once in a while, doing some push-ups.
The mental work we have to do to know ourselves, and like, how can you love someone you don't know? It's impossible. You've never met them.
It's impossible to love somebody that you don't know.
Yeah, in computer terms, I think if Mike were here, he keeps having to step out because he's earning so much money.
Yeah.
He would call it. I'm fascinated when computer programmers use terminology, and even scientists use terminology that we as humans use in our day-to-day life. So a handshake.
Yeah.
In computing terminology, the computer A cannot talk to computer B without a handshake. And that's interesting to think about. I've been fascinated by that in my mind. The more I work with him, it gives a rise to a different idea of what a handshake is.
Yeah, it's not just a greeting; it's actually a connection.
Yeah.
And if you think about it as being a connection, then you have to learn how to shake your own hand.
Yeah, and you can't. It would be very difficult to dialogue with another human being if you hadn't first shaken hands with yourself.
Yes.
Which is probably why I know, like, both me and you have always felt awkward when you shake hands with a man, but you don't shake hands with a woman.
Yeah.
Now, in some cases, when you know them, it is appropriate to shake hands with the man, but hug the woman.
Right.
But in a lot of cases, the man gets the handshake, but the woman gets nothing.
Gets absolutely nothing.
And
she gets a look.
And that's bullshit, because you and I both consider her to be the stronger and smarter of the two.
Yeah. Like the person I honestly want to engage with first.
Right.
Honestly, if I see a couple.
Right.
I want to meet the wife more than I want to meet the guy.
Yeah.
So oftentimes I will absolutely just kind of give the guy a half handshake because my focus is already on his wife.
Yeah, you're trying to get past the emissary.
Yeah.
The block.
Yeah, I want to get straight to the controlling party.
I appreciate you, but could you move out of the way?
Yeah.
I have someone to talk to.
I need to talk to the king,
I think there's a funny thing about kids born in our timeline is because I know, like, even though we had different musical tastes and I was real late to the game, like that line from Adam Duritz, The Counting Crows, I belong in the service of a queen.
That's exactly the line that hit my head just then when I was saying that.
Like I think that came out like 96, 97.
Yeah, it was a while back.
And I think so many people of our generation resonated with that. It was like, nah, man, the king thing is done. Yeah. But like the queen thing,
that's happening.
That may be just starting. Like that might be a thing.
I'm going to be talking to the queens of the world very soon. I was hoping to engage with that this Saturday, but that's not going to happen. This Saturday, we are still doing the podcast. This will be posted after the podcast party happens, so this will have already happened. But right now, it hasn't happened yet.
Correct.
If it goes well, then I will be very, very excited. I'm a little nervous about it right now.
Yeah, I understand that. We're gonna live stream, so hopefully some people will catch that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the live stream has some engagement because not because I'm trying to get engagement, but I really want to know in real time what people think about this podcast party.
Yeah,
because this is sort of the way that I want to go with podcasting. To tell you the truth, I want to have as much engagement as possible. My only frustration in the last 50, 60 episodes has been I can't engage with the people that I'm talking to immediately. And so this is kind of an experiment in that vein, if you want to think about it that way.
Yeah.
But that's for tomorrow, and I guess this show is done for today. This is Tattoo with Children.
Well, I was going to say I'm going to go live right now, and I'm going to pause your. I'm going to pause your closing. I just paused the exit.
Yeah, okay.
It's a very white thing to do, isn't it?
Hold on.
Yeah,
we're not done yet.
It's also a very male thing to do. Like I just literally mailed and whited you at the same time. Without being even really nice about it.
No, just like I was going to let you do this, but
now I'm not going to let you do this.
Go ahead, King White Man. Continue your actions.
Listen, okay. What I wanted to say was, why don't you, since we have no viewers yet,
sure,
why don't you go over what we're doing Saturday night again. And if people would like to be a part of our sound check, go ahead and give them an invitation.
All right, sure. So this Saturday, we're inviting an audience to watch us podcast, and we're inviting different podcasts to podcast with us.
Correct.
Okay? And so they'll come in and they'll do a show, and we'll engage them the way that they want.
Okay.
Like, we're just going to give them the studio for the link to their podcast.
Yeah.
And then we're going to do our podcast, and our studio's back with us, and then we'll do our podcast, and hopefully something kind of interesting happens. Like, this is the whole reason why I was doing this in the first place, was to sort of engage with the people around me.
Right.
And people are doing podcasts now. And so I'm like, all right, if you're doing podcasts, I'm doing podcasts, then our podcast can actually talk to each other.
Yeah, and if you listen to us podcasting, then you could come and be a part of it. This time, we may kick you out of the room. It may not go well. The whole thing may be a giant flop. We may be live. We may record for later. We don't really know. This is more of a sound check.
Yeah, this is kind of a sound check. And so we didn't invite people yet, but next time, Nipsey, next time, we're absolutely going to invite everybody that's interested to come down and party with us. The purpose being is I want you to engage with this conversation that I'm having, because like me and Ben can bounce back and forth all day, but if I can include you into it,
right,
the conversation expands and I learn faster.
Right.
And that's exactly what I'm like. This is really in my self-interest. And so, we're going to invite you guys to come down here. Not this Saturday, because this is going to post after the thing happens, and so it's too late. But next time, and it's going to be a next time, you're absolutely invited to come to the podcast party. And the podcast party is a weekend thing. It's going to be on a Saturday evening every time.
Yeah.
And we'll do how it goes. Like, I don't know exactly how it's going to go yet, because I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, we'll talk Monday about how it went.
We're gonna get more into it, and you'll hear about how it went, and you'll be able to hear the actual podcast itself at least two ways.
Yeah, and then if you do want to try to participate with us, DM us, and we'll get you some more information.
We'll get information on where to message and what to say on the message as that comes up.
All right, you want to do that thing now?
With your permission, sir, I would appreciate it. Now that I am able to, I just want to tell you that you've been listening to Tattoo with Children. I've been your host, Flavor Ray. You can find Tattoo with Children on Facebook at Tattoo with Children. You can find us on Instagram at Tattoo with Children. You can find us on Twitter at Tattooed With. You can find me on Twitter at Hunter Vanguard. That's one word, Hunter Vanguard. You can also find me on IG at Madara Shadow. You can find Ben, King White Man, at Black Crow Brother on IG. You can also find him at Black Spot Tattoo Company. And you can find Mike, who's out of the room right now, but he is definitely a big part of the show. You can find him at CAO Payne on Instagram, and also at Payne.points. It's Payne spelled Payne. And I also like to remind you that I am not a starving artist per se, but I still do need your money. So if you can go to Patreon and drop a $5 or so, I would be dreadfully appreciative of that, and I will definitely give you a shout out, guaranteed. And that is the show. Please take care of yourself before you take care of anybody else. And please remember that at least one person on this planet loves you. See you later.
Love you guys.
We were born to bring it back, but it's more than basic. It's a portion of its rap, but the core is ancient. It's imported like a pack of some more observations. They're important like the fact that